Professor John Quiggin. John is currently the Australian Research Council Federation Fellow Professor at the University of Queensland in the School of Economics. He runs our Risk and Sustainable Management Group. John has twice won Federation Fellowships from the ARC. These are extremely prestigious awards. He's a very regular and well-known commentator on a whole range of economic affairs. Probably best known for his work on utility theory, but you'll often see John's comments in the Fin Review, those of you who read that publication. His main interests currently are around the Murray-Darling Basin, and you have on your chair there the Alumni Connections magazine, and the lovely-looking gentleman on the front, if my eyes don't deceive me, is indeed the person in front of you here, Professor John Quiggin.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, well, I think that we've been dealing with these problems, obviously, facing problems in a more acute fashion in the Murray-Darling for a long period. There are some lessons I think to learn. Yes, I think there are some lessons we can learn from the Murray-Darling, well, I guess emphasising Paul's point. Because water is heavy, water ain't water. It's not something where you can say, well, we have a policy that works everywhere. Every catchment, in essence, is different because you can't, in practical terms, take water from one place to another. So there are totally different issues, even in places that are physically quite close together. Nonetheless, I think it's striking, looking at the issues we're talking about, and the issues of risk and uncertainty is my big focus, that for a long time the idea of irrigated agriculture in Australia was focused on the notion of drought proofing. We have these droughts and floods, they're a bad thing. What we should do is tame things in such a way that that we can simply have a steady, regular supply of water. And that policy has been a total and proven failure. I think it's been abandoned by every serious observer, not merely for the obvious reason that we get droughts that are too bad to be proofed. Nothing could have protected us against the droughts of the last 10 years, but because we also miss opportunities in the good years. If we say we're going to only do things that we can cover with reliable supply of water every year, we miss out on a huge range of opportunities. Things like cotton growing can be done very efficiently, saying we'll wait and see. If we've got water, we'll plant a crop. If not, we won't. So the notion of trying to maintain stability, a stable, guaranteed supply in a system where the inputs are incredibly unstable has proved in the Murray-Darling context to be a big mistake. Now, that doesn't necessarily prove that it's a mistake in the urban context. Obviously, we certainly want security in the sense that when we turn the tap on in the bathroom, something comes out. But we don't necessarily want to have complete stability on the demand side. So far we've handled that problem almost entirely through restrictions. When water runs short, we say, well, you can't use it for this and you can't use it for that. I think that is an appropriate way of dealing with water supply problems in the short term. On the other hand, I think the same reasoning says long-term permanent restrictions are a bad idea, particularly for the reason that when you do need to reduce water supply, the restrictions you already have in place are ones you can't use. So if you balance demand and supply using restrictions, then you have to go to more draconian restrictions the moment that your calculations fall astray. So I think we need to be aware, as Paul said, that we have substantial year-to-year variation. We also need to be aware, in the context of things like droughts and floods, that we have predictable variation within the year. It doesn't make sense to me to say let's have a target, for example, in the context of the current debate of maintaining Wivenhoe Dam at a nominal 100% level, the same level at the beginning of the wet season as at the end. That seems not to take account of obviously predictable variations. It seems to be just something where we've failed to take account of the fact that we have variability and uncertainty in the system. So I think an acceptance, as Paul said, of the fact that this isn't Europe, this isn't somewhere where we can expect the rain to fall in a regular pattern every year. We have to live with that. We have to take advantage of it where it's advantageous. We have to live with the consequences where it's not. Thanks.
We now move to Mr. Pat Nixon. Pat's our man on the ground, so to speak. Pat is a water engineer with over 20 years' experience. He's been involved in been involved in planning, design, documentation, contract management and construction over the supervision of water, wastewater and recycled water infrastructure projects. He works with Sinclair Knight Mertz and he's based in Brisbane, and importantly he's an alum at the University of Queensland. Welcome, Pat. Can you just make sure your microphone's on?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Can everyone hear me up the back? Okay, I suppose my first point is we're having a first world discussion, so please be thankful and grateful for that. There's many people who don't have that, and so as a contextual issue, I think that's important to consider. Having put that absolute contextual issue on the plate, let's push it aside and get into the relativeness of it. For me, we have a pretty good system of water management in southeast Queensland, but one that definitely can improve. And so I think that we should all sort of work together with regard to the improvement of that. Some of the challenges that I see is when the model was recently brought in, the expectation was it was a transferred electricity model. There may not have been sufficient consideration of the quality of water. Whilst I understand that there's a quality of electricity, I think the significant aspects of the quality of water, which is a food-grade product that we supply to all of you, may not have been adequately addressed with regard to that. So there's potential opportunity for improvement in the system with regard to aspects of the quality of the water. The other thing is the way that we chose to restructure was to basically take horizontal cuts through the total water cycle. That has obviously advantages and disadvantages. I suppose some of the disadvantages for me are that there's more interfaces, so therefore there's potentially more risk with regard to passage of product from one service provider to another. But the other thing for me that is a bit of a concern is I feel, and this is a personal assertion, that the environment became a slightly lower priority as a result of the way that we chose to undertake the new model. I think in the crisis where the model was developed and implemented, we prioritised economics and society over the environment. And I think that there probably should be a little bit of work with regard to trying to readdress that balance. The other thing that I think is important is, and I ask a question to the collective audience here, do you believe that you were consulted enough with regard to the standards of service of our water system? The reason I ask that is your choice, you could have water restrictions a little bit more often. You could have them potentially with a slightly longer duration or a slightly deeper severity. Whilst they are fairly, at times, esoteric questions, the cost that comes with having a gold-plated water supply system can be quite significant, and that is part of the reason why you are getting increased water charges. So I suppose my challenge to you is are you happy with the guarantee that you've been given with regard to the standards of service, or would have you been able to accept something slightly lower and therefore potentially not have as expensive a system that's required? Now that is a community question and one that I think may need to be discussed a little bit more in the community. And finally, and linked in with that, it brings back to what was mentioned by Paul, that what we're doing now is managing the extremes. It's easy to manage an average water supply system. It's not so easy to manage the extremes. And this is where the question of what standards of service are you prepared to accept become very important. Because sometimes we provide infrastructure that is not used continuously, it's used intermittently to provide you that standard of service at an extreme, and that can be expensive infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.